to read this verse. That's really been something that we've been passing around as we've been talking. So it's from 2 Corinthians 4, verse 4. And this is what it says. It says, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. So this verse is a bit of a full-on verse. It's pretty hardcore, right? Because it starts off talking about Satan, which is pretty full-on always. And it actually says that he's the god of this world, so he's kind of in charge sometimes of this world and of systems in this world. And what he's done is that he's actually blinded people from seeing the real truth about God and who he is. But before I go into that and all that stuff, so I want to tell you guys about some stories, okay? This story actually stuck, and everybody loves stories. I know you guys like stories, so, I thought I'd have some stories in there. But it starts off with these two little older ladies. They're really cute, right? One of them's actually not with us anymore, but one of them is still around and still has a lot of contact with us. They came from overseas to Australia to actually help in this whole mission of telling the people the truth about God, because they knew that a lot of people are blinded about who God really is, and they have a lot of questions about the real truth about God. So they came to Australia to be actually in the business of telling people about God. And there was one suburb that caught their attention when they came here. This suburb had a lot of problems, and a whole bunch of them, I think, came from the fact that they didn't really know their purpose in life. They didn't really know God personally. A lot of the different ideas they had about God was because of maybe, religion and customs and culture and stuff like that. But there was a lot of problems in this suburb when it came to drugs. There was a lot of drug dealing. Broken families were normal. Everybody came from a broken family. Teenage pregnancy happened all the time and stuff like that. And so this suburb is called Cabramatta. You guys might have heard of it before. But these two little older Anglo ladies decided to settle in this very Asian suburb of Cabramatta. Okay, they actually decided to make it their home. And so they were in this business of telling people about God. And they used to have all these things, things for adults to come to and hear about God, things for teenagers to come to hear about God, and things for kids. Okay, so they used to run this kids club, and they used to go out to Cabramatta Park and have all the kids playing and stuff like that, and then sit them all down and tell them about God. And the story of these two little older ladies passes down to a story of a girl and a boy, okay, who used to go to this kids club. The girl, right, she came from such a tough family, she had such a tough background, that some of the stories she would tell you would break you down about her family. And her family was broken and all. But she used to come to this kids club. She had no idea about God. Her family came from a Buddhist background, so they really had different ideas about God. They thought, that you could meditate to your God, and so he wouldn't really listen, but he was just there. And he wasn't really a God, he was a person just like you. And so it was all mixed up and stuff like that. So they had all these different ideas about God. So she used to come to this kids club and listen to this lady talk about God. And then after a while, she decided, what this lady was saying was actually true. So she started to think, okay, hang on, maybe this is true. Maybe this is answering some of the questions that I've had about my life, about who I am. And so she started to believe in God. But then as she went through her teenage time, she started getting into lots of trouble. She got kicked out from a few schools. And then when this older lady found out, that this girl's not staying in school and she's not really coping, she made it her mission to make sure this girl finishes school, right? So she got her into a Christian school, and this girl stuffed that up as well, right? She got kicked out of that school too, and she went to another school, and in the end she was like, in the special school they called tutorial, so she was kind of like, she had different rules and things like that because, they get suspended and expelled from so many different schools. But it was during that time that this girl remembered all the things that the lady told her about God, and it was then when it hit her and she just thought, what am I doing with my life? And she decided she was going to believe in God, and her whole life changed. Everything changed about her. She finished school at the end of that, which is absolutely amazing. It's a miracle that anybody that goes to tutorial ever finishes school. All right? She got a good HSC, like a good UAI. Now they call it ATAR. She got an okay ATAR. She got into uni. She's been working her job for like 10 or so years. She's really successful, really good at what she does, and now she's going back to finish her degree, and she'll be finished next semester. Now this girl, the story of this girl is actually one of us here at Drive. She's actually sitting in this very room. She is part of Drive. These are one of the stories that really encapsulates who we are as Drive. And there was this boy as well, okay? At the same time, they grew up together, so they've always been friends since they were kids. And this boy, he was such a smart aleck, right? You could just picture him in class mouthing off to every teacher that he had, all right? Being smart, but he had the same sort of experience. He learned some things about God when he was a kid in the kids club. And then as he grew up, it was so hard for him to put those things that God wanted him to do into practice. You know, and so he struggled growing up to actually find his feet and obey what God wanted him to do. And he went through so many hardships, and today he's here with us. And if you ask him, he would tell you that his life couldn't be pictured without God. He could not see himself without God. In fact, it's only because his relationship with God that it actually what holds him down, what ties him down, what makes him live a good life. And so the truth is that these are two stories of people that are here with us at Drive, and they used to be blind to who God was, but because of the work of these two little old ladies, they actually went from being blind to being able to see the truth about God. And I know there's a whole bunch of us here as well that have been touched by these two little older ladies that are really cute and stuff, okay? I know that there's some of us here that are like that. And then there's a story of this kid, right, who grew up in a Christian home, had a sort of a different story, and at the tender age of 8, he decided that when he learned about how God, sent his own son Jesus, and Jesus died on the cross for his sins, he just thought, Jesus actually thought of me when he died on the cross. He just thought, there's so much love in that. The only thing that I can do in response is give up my life to him. Like, that's such a complex idea. And at the age of 8, he decided to make that commitment. But then as he grew up as well, his teenage life was pretty full on. And then he actually believed this lie that he could get more out of life without God. And so he tried that. He partied hard. He, played music. He had a lot of, drinking going on and stuff like that. And it was only when he was about 28 that he was partying on a boat sort of thing, like a yacht thing. Okay, and the beam that holds up the sails swung around and hit him square in the face. And it was actually like God literally just slapped him out of it, right? And so he fell off the boat, and he thought about himself, and he just thought, what am I doing with my life? Where am I going? And it was then that his blindness went from not knowing what he was doing, or not actually knowing where he was going in life, to actually seeing the truth about God. And he was going to lose everything because he believed this lie that he could get more out of life without God. He was going to lose it all, lose his family, lose his job, everything. But then God made him see the truth and how he wanted to live life. And it was actually only because of this person and listening to what God wanted him to say that today we've got Drive, which is pretty amazing. We're all about these stories of people that were used to be blind and now we see. And then there's this story of this kid who lacked so much self-esteem, so much confidence, who used to get put down so much when he was younger, that he could never picture himself standing up in front of a group of people and talking about something. And I'm standing right in front of you guys talking about this. And the only reason why I'm talking about God is because the same thing happened to me. I used to be blind, and now I see, and now I can't shut up about it. When I used to be blind about God, life didn't have a meaning for me. And then when I could see, I had so much purpose in life. There's so much reason to live every day of my life. Now I can't shut up about God. And so I think God kind of said, this guy's not going to be able to shut up. So we're just going to give him a job where he can talk about me all the time. So that's what I do, 9 to 5 every day. I get to talk about God to teenage kids all over the place, which is really cool, But that's what I do because I can't shut up about it. I used to be blind, and now I see. And you know what? That encapsulates us as Drive. We are all about these stories of people who used to be blind and now we see. And there's some of us here who have also been given a good, kind of family life. We've been raised up well, and we don't want to let it go to waste. And so now we want to be part of these stories, and we want to live life the way that God wanted us to live it. And there's some of us as well here that have been put down so much by our families, that have been treated so badly by our parents. And there are these stories. I'm thinking about people in specific. So they've been put down so much that you couldn't ever picture them coming out of it. But actually, those people are some of the best fathers, some of the best mothers that I know. In fact, one of them is a mother in Drive Church, and I find it hard to top her with another example of a better mum. She is that good. And so it's amazing how God can actually take these lives of people that have been blinded, who can make them see and then bring them out of all this stuff that they've gone through. And even some of us who haven't maybe come out of all this crazy stuff, but still we don't want to let all the good things that our parents have done go to waste. We want to be part of adding these stories to our stories. And so this is what Drive is. It's all about these stories. But you know what? And we say this all the time. There are a lot of people out there who are in the same place that we once were. They are blind and they can't see the truth about God. And so we're stuck in this predicament. And that's what the Bible says. If I can go back to that verse. It says Satan is the god of this world. He's blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They can't see the glorious light of the good news. In other words, the good news is just Jesus dying for us, for our sins. And the way that Satan actually does that is by using systems in our society that blind people from seeing the truth about God. And that's why we were at one point blind to who God was. And you know, some of these systems, they're all different. Lots of people come into interaction with so many of these things. You know, some of them could be that people listen to someone who sounds really like experty and like they know what they're talking about, so they believe what this person is saying, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're telling the truth. There are a lot of people in our society that actually talk like that, like they know exactly what they're talking about, but really don't, and are really leading a whole bunch of people along with them who are believing the lies. Satan uses things like that. Or whether it's the media making people really afraid all the time, so much so that they can't really trust their lives to someone else external to them. They can't really trust their lives to God because they feel like they have to take matters into their own hands. There are so many of these systems going around all over the place that lead people from being blind to even more blind. And it's kind of like the blind leading the blind. That's what Jesus says. And so these systems are all over the place. But look at what God did to us. For God, who said, "Let there be light in the darkness," and has made this light shine in our hearts so we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ. So as that verse just sits up there and you kind of just think about it, I want to tell you about some things. There's a girl that came up to me this week and she was telling me about a story, about her family. Her mum had actually converted their basement for satanic worship, which is crazy. She drew like this whole circle and a big star, that thing, and she had candles all over the place, and it was all dedicated for satanic worship. And you know what? And I'll tell you guys more about the story, but you know what's the other lie that Satan sells in this world? The idea that maybe people can have spirituality without God. And and it's not hard to believe because like so many people have confused the idea of God so much that people are just over it. They're just like, well, maybe I can meditate and not really need a God. Or maybe I can just have these things and not really need a God. Maybe I can center myself and not really worry about who God is. And it leads people astray all the time. And you know what? You'd be surprised how many kids, even teenagers and stuff, have actually done things like Ouija boards and had like seances at their house and things like just really weird things. But things we would consider as really pretty weird and far out is actually becoming really common. And this girl was telling me about how her mum had converted their basement for satanic worship. And she was saying to me, I've moved out of my mum's house now. I'm living with my dad. But she says every day, almost every day, something really weird happens to her at home. Sometimes it's smoke coming out of her room door and there's nothing there, and just things that completely freak her out. All because she's left herself open to all these things. And that, the spiritual world does exist, evil does exist. And so these things can have our way with us sometimes. And so she's like, and she was actually in tears when she was telling me this. She was absolutely scared. She was terrified. The truth is, this happens all the time because it's Satan taking people from not knowing about God to making them even blinder and blinder and blinder, and thinking that maybe they can have life without God. But this is what God's done for us. The same God that said, let there be light, who actually made light, he has made his light shine in our hearts. You know, light's like a metaphor almost in the Bible for truth. And it's kind of poetically saying, the same God that made light, he made his truth shine in us so that when we couldn't see, now we can see. Which is amazing. And there's so much love in that God actually wanted us to see the truth about him so that we can know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ. So even though Satan uses his systems in the world to blind people, we're here. And we know the truth. And we're not blind anymore. That's what's so cool about this, is that there's actually a fight going on. And Satan is blinding so many people. But here we are, can see the truth. And I'm sure so many of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. That moment when like a light bulb flashed in your head and you just realize, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, that moment. So many people are missing that moment. So many people are living without that moment. I want to read you guys something else. Bottom line, if you don't get anything from what I'm saying this morning, okay, this is all I'm trying to say. Our stories are, we used to be blind, now we can see, so it should be all about us helping other people see. That's all it should be really about. Look at Philippians chapter 2. This is another part of the Bible. It says, so that no one can criticize you. He's just talking about something else. But he says, live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining bright like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Hold firmly to the word of life. Then on the day of Christ's return, I will be proud that I did not run the race in vain and that my work was not useless. Now, the guy that wrote this, his name was Paul. And he wrote this because he was the one who actually told these people that were getting this letter about God. And they believed in him, okay? But he didn't want them to kind of throw it away. He didn't want them to kind of just get that light bulb moment and just throw it all away. He wanted them to live lives that would show other people the truth as well. And he says to them a couple of things. He says, live good lives. Because a lot of people around them were living really bad lives. And when people see you live in a good life, they kind of think, well, there must be something different about them. And so that's part of who we are as drivers, that we need to kind of live different lives so that people can go, okay, what's different about you? What do you have that I don't have? How can you cope with all those things and I can't? You know, and then we can talk about, because I can see things. I can see things that God has already showed me. It's true. I can see him for what he really is. See, our stories are, we used to be blind, now we can see, and we can help other people see the truth as well. And it says we shine like bright stars, which is like a really cool imagery sort of thing. But then it says something else. It says, hold up the word of life. I think it's there. Oh, there it is, in the first line. Hold firmly to the word of life. You know what I think of it? It's kind of like holding it up. And the word of life is the Bible. It's just what God says, pretty much. And he's kind of like holding it up so that everybody else can see it. So that everybody can see the truth. That's what we're all about. Satan has blinded so many people in this world. People that were just like us, blind and they can't see. But now we can see. And we can help other people see what we can see. See, the thing is for us is that Drive isn't just an organisation. It's not an organisation of just people. And I know some of you guys have been to churches in the past. And usually in churches, the people up the front are the ones that do all the work. You know, so only like 2 or 3 people that do all the work and everybody else just kind of comes. Drive isn't like that. Drive is not an organisation of just people. Drive is actually the sum of our stories. Drive is us. This is Drive. These stories that I told you guys about of people that are sitting in this very room, that's Drive. That's what it's all about. And like I said, I'm not going to talk for very long, but I want you to do something. And I'm not really bossy usually, okay? So can you afford me this one time this morning, just to be a little bit bossy, okay? But I want you to do something. If this resonates with you, I want you to go back and give it a little thought and think, how am I active in the business of letting blind people who can't see the truth about God come to see who he is as he is? I want you to just think about it. Just give yourself some time to think about it. Even sit down at a desk or something like that so you can be completely like, you know, no distractions. Thank you. So I want you to do something else, okay? This is me being really, really bossy now. But I want you to then think of all the things that you're good at. Think of all the dreams that you've had in your life, all the things that you've ever wanted to do. And just think of how they can be part of letting someone else, letting other people who can't see God, see him. And I want you to write it down. You know, because I find like writing things down helps you really solidify them, helps you really kind of think about them. Write those things down. We've done this in the past. We've written down our visions and our dreams and stuff like that. And we've gone back to look at lists and stuff. And we can see that all of them have been done. Like so many of them we can see now are like what's going on in our lives, which is amazing, you know. But I want you to write it down. And there's one more thing I want you to do, okay? And this is like over the top bossy now. But I want you to then go and tell one person about it. It doesn't have to be about everything that you've written down. It doesn't have to be like a whole long-winded thing. Just tell them a little bit, even in a conversation, even just in a conversation. And I'll tell you why, okay? Because writing it down helps you think about it. But when you say it out loud, those things that you've thought about actually become real. And it's a step forward towards them becoming fully fledged real. Because, you know, when you say it out loud and you share your thought with someone else, it's out there already. So it's already real. I want you guys to do that. Like, it doesn't even have to be like you go talk to someone from Drive or anything. It could just be anyone. Right? Just think of your dreams and your like aspirations and think, how can I use that? How can I be that? Well, think of what you're good at. Think of how can I do that so that blind people can go from being blind about God to seeing the truth about God and just tell one person about it, even just in conversation, even if it's just passing. But I want to finish off, okay? And I want to tell you about one last story, all right? This story is of a girl who got baptized a couple of weeks ago. And so we went to watch her get baptized, all right? And it was one of the most beautiful things that I have seen. And baptisms are just beautiful completely. And, you know, most people would think baptisms are a bit weird and someone getting dunked in water and stuff like that. But actually, it's just a symbolism. Someone who's kind of gone from being blind to being able to see, it's like an outward symbolism of that because that stuff happens inside. And so it's really beautiful being able to go see someone getting dunked in the water and pulled back up. And it's kind of like them going, I'm going to live my life for God, you know, because this is what I want to do. Because He's given me everything. It was so beautiful to go and see. This person who got baptized, maybe Drive had nothing to do with that. She came into Drive and she's already been a Christian. Maybe Drive had nothing to do with that. And I'm pretty sure it didn't really, okay? Because we're pretty new and stuff. But you know what? Even though Drive had nothing to do with her journey towards God, and that day when she got baptized, she is actually a representation of all the new stories that will be part of Drive in the future. She is actually a picture of all the new stories that will be part of Drive and will join the stories that we already have. She's actually the first one, which is amazing. And so I'm just going to leave this with you guys. So these are our stories, right? We've gone from being blind to being able to see. But who's going to be next? Where's the next story going to come from? Perhaps it might be your family friend, a family member. Perhaps it might be a friend. Who's going to be the next story? And how are you going to be part of that story? It's just going to be amazing to see. And it's going to happen. You believe it or not, it's going to happen. Whether I come across really well in this talk or not, or if I stuff it up or don't, it's actually going to happen because God's doing it, which is amazing. How are you going to be part of it? We'll pray together, yeah?